Welcome back, everybody, to the Breakthrough Moment podcast. My name is Zach Dean with special guest Emmanuel Anthony. What a pleasure it is to have you back. Emmanuel, are you there? Can you hear us?
I'm here. Yeah, I can see you and hear you. We're not at your house in Manly like we were many years ago, but I can see and hear you.
Yeah, we're here. We're loud and clear. For those of you who don't know, Emmanuel and I did an interview, actually, probably one of my very first interviews ever. It was in my garage at the time where I started my YouTube channel. And here we are over a decade later. And it's so exciting to have you back. I've interviewed you tons of times now, and for good reason. So if you're out there, guys, let me do a quick little introduction and we'll dive into your breakthrough. For those of you who don't know Emmanuel Anthony is a researcher, a teacher, inspirational speaker, D-Martini facilitator, and consultant who works one-on-one and one-to-many with people globally, helping them overcome mental disorders, challenges, and achieve their goals, expand human awareness, and maximize human potential. Helps them also gain clarity on their mission and lead highly inspired lives within all areas of life. He's been doing this for a very long time and he's helped thousands of people globally. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. For those of you who don't know, the Breakthrough Moment podcast is all around interviewing successful entrepreneurs and investors and asking what is the pivotal breakthrough moment in your career that broke you into the next level of success. And as they share our breakthroughs with us at home can have breakthroughs as well. So here we are. It's that time. We did it. Emmanuel, where do we start? Where has been your biggest breakthrough throughout your career? Let's start there.
I'd definitely say self-worth. I feel that it's kind of the bouncing board that gives you permission. And when you can elevate that to the greatest degree, then you can actually, as you scale and move up within your business, you can give yourself permission to keep moving forward. For me, that was attending a breakthrough experience with Dr. John DeMartini. Interestingly enough, I actually have the workshop in my calendar. I think it was a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. I set it in there as the date that changed my life. So every year when that comes up, it's kind of like my celebration that I attended a introductory talk and then attended a workshop, and my life and the trajectory of it really changed. So I'd say attending that over a decade or so ago and working on some emotional charges and resolving them within a couple of minutes. It was a couple of hours, but I was knocking through like major things within minutes. And that really altered my self-worth to the point where within one 48-hour weekend, I had a graphic design business and employees. And I came back from Perth to Melbourne and I was sitting in my bed redesigning my vision and my life. Neurologically, I was never the same. I couldn't go back to what I did because as I had taken the time to have a look at my values and who I was and what my life demonstrated, it was clearly evident that I was much more inspired to actually, and my life had shown it. My whole life, even in year 12, while I was finishing my exams, I was helping people with problems. I was texting them. It was like an online service before there was an online service. But it clearly demonstrated a pathway within my life. And that helped me increase my self-worth to a degree and find a strategy for that, where every time I hit the next roadblock or the next imposter syndrome, I had a strategy that within half an hour to an hour, I could transcend the emotional associations to that. So for me, that's what it is, having a strategy and a process to overcome limiting beliefs in around your self-worth and drastically improve it in minutes and hours instead of weeks, months, or years.
That's pretty amazing.
I think so.
A quick pause before we continue. Hey, everybody, please, if you're enjoying this podcast, if it's allowing you to think differently and have your own breakthrough moment too, please subscribe, please like this video, share it with somebody else, and even comment below. I'd love to know what has been your biggest breakthrough moment listening to today. I read all the comments and your responses help me shape the future of this podcast so other people can have breakthroughs too. All right, let's get back to it. Yeah, that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. What was it about that breakthrough? Like, was there a specific moment where you like felt a change or your mind saw the
Yeah.
world in a different way? Like, and what was that change and like, why did that happen?
So I was working on my father. We can have breakthroughs. I like to think of the human brain as being very similar to a hard drive on your computer. So I'm on a Mac now, and I could click on the little Apple thing just on the right side of my screen. And I could, if my computer was running slow, I could ask to have a look at the computer, and then it'll give me a bar, and that bar has kind of at the bottom the wording, and at the top a color associated with it. So it might say you've got 50% files, 10% images, etc. And our brains work exactly the same way, but with emotional baggage. So we could have an issue. In my case, I had a challenge with my father, and let's say I was occupying 50% or 60% of my brain noise. And then 20% was an ex-partner, and 5% was this, and 1% was that. And I felt like, although I was considerably doing okay and moving up with aspects of my career and my life, if I looked at all 7 areas: physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, vocation, and family. But in the mental area, I had challenges that were probably leaving me with only 20%, 25% clarity of mind. And when I worked on my father, that was about 50%. So if you have 25% clarity and you knock out 50%, it's a game changer. We've just gone from the smallest shareholder, a quarter of my ability to think, and 75% of this stuff that could just pop up at any time and trigger off emotional volatility, to now having 75%, I'm the main shareholder now. So that just freed up so much clarity. But I remember the moment, it was when I broke through the last part of the DeMartini method form, and I was looking at DeMartini on stage, and everything around him and the whole room just softened up. It was like I had some pills or something, and I couldn't believe it. I was having a euphoric experience, but I hadn't had anything. I'd taken anything. I'd just been drinking water and having food at that workshop. But when the whole thing collapsed, I mean, that's what they call it, a breakthrough, because you break through. It was easily 20-something years worth of associations and challenges and anger and frustration towards my dad. And you've done the breakthrough method with me, so you know what that feels like. But when that happened, it just lifted that weight off my shoulder. I looked on the stage, tears came to my eyes, and I realized that I was meant to be doing what this man's doing on stage, and in my own form. But that was always my destiny. I just hadn't given myself permission. I'd had all of these excuses. I have to be older. I have to have 1,000,001 certifications. There was all of these excuses, and then all of a sudden, I just looked on stage and I said, that's what I'm meant to be doing. So that was the first one. The second one was when I got back from Perth and I was sitting in my room. And as I was sitting in my room, it was dark. I don't really know why I left it dark. I was kind of had my feet tucked in as if I was doing like a sitting on the ground position. And I was on my bed, and I was just kind of recalibrating everything that had happened that weekend. And one of the things that I'd done was my values determination. It's a 13 set of questions by DeMartini. Where are you most organized, disciplined, reliable, and focused? What do you think about, talk about, spend your money on? Just a range of questions that deconstruct your life. I didn't go through all of them, but there are a range of them. And 3 answers for each in questions, 39 answers all up. And then you kind of group them together. And I thought having a design business, I would have been up there, but there was only one answer in the 39 that had design in it. And that was, what do you spend your money on? And it had designer clothes. The rest didn't have design. 70% of that was human evolution, development, and growth, and the study of that. And then a smaller percentage of that was physical vitality. I was into bodybuilding. And then a tiny percent was family, not because I didn't love them. I just felt that was, other than my father, quite stable. So when I saw that, I looked 50, 20, 30 years into the future. I can't remember how long it was. And I said, if I'm stay a graphic designer, how do I feel? And it felt like a slow Chinese torture that would be happening, where I'd be doing something I liked, but not something I loved. Like I'd be just living like a half version of my full capabilities. Then I imagined myself on stage sharing wisdom that could help people transform their lives. And as I saw that, I just broke down crying. Both of my eyes spontaneously just had tears coming through them. And for anyone that is really into the work that I do, you know that tears of gratitude and appreciation are feedback signals that you're on mission and that you're really open your heart. And as I saw that, I said, I'd rather die attempting to stand up than live comfortably on my knees. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I just said, let's focus on the next step. And as we focus on this next step, I've just learned this tool to alter my perceptions and bring them into balance. So let's apply that tool to all the challenges that come my way. And that's all it's ever been about. Today, it's still the same thing. I just play a game of what's the next step. In basketball, you'll hear basketball players say next shot mentality or something like that, which just means, oh, I missed that shot. Great. It's next shot mentality. I can't linger on that last shot. Stephen Curry talks about it. And it's one of the best shooters in the world. So it's just been the same thing. It's what's the next thing mentality. Let's go. And I'm guaranteed to what people will call fail. I think it's just learning, to be honest. Sometimes we think we're going to be perfectionists. I'm guaranteed to do that. I just want to do that and get that process started so that I can lead towards mastery. That's been, it were the two moments for me. And I remember them very clearly.
How exciting. Congratulations. And now we're here. Obviously, a bunch of other breakthroughs in between, I'm sure. But if you could just quickly, before we continue, if you're an entrepreneur out there or a high performer who wants more clarity and direction in life, or maybe you're going through some kind of turbulent transitional phase, I want to share with you something that I co-built. It's called the Life Blueprint System. It's an AI-powered goal-setting process that helps you create a personalized life blueprint, kind of like an architectural plan or a business plan, but for your life. And so it allows you to take and capture those big ideas, those amazing thoughts you have, and to turn it into a proven plan of action. And so if you want to stop guessing and start building your future intentionally and consciously, go to the lifeblueprint.io to learn more. Let's go back to the episode. Give some advice to other entrepreneurs out there who maybe they have some emotional weight around their father or around an ex or around their mother or around the world or whatever it is, a business partner. What advice would you give to them in working through this to have this same breakthrough as well?
Well, definitely the first thing is whenever somebody works with me, we want to have a look at what's the emotional blueprint of what's going on in the background. There's nothing more frustrating as an entrepreneur than having stuff in the background that's creating brain noise, taking up what could be utilized within your most inspiring vocation and vision and mission. So I would say that's the first thing. And when people work with me, we do an advanced discovery form. Because if I have a conversation with someone on the phone, that's just a discovery call. It's, are we a good fit? Do we match? But once they commit to creating changes in their life, we need to find out what's all of the stuff that's just sitting in the background. And then let's give them percentages to get a clear understanding of what's the big, low, or medium. And we don't know what we're going to find. And it's not a good or bad thing. It's just that's the reality of what's there. I know you and I have worked on relationship challenges, and I'm sure at the times that we worked on them, because you've always been quite a people person and bringing projects together when you were in Australia anyway. And part of that was, you had to be present, you had to be focused, you had to speak to a lot of people. When you're going through those relationship challenges, you probably wanted to speak to absolutely nobody because of what was clouding your mind. So once you get clear on what that is, the key is to then start balancing the emotions associated with that permanently and forever so that you can get clarity of mind back. And I discovered something many years ago, it was over a decade ago. In my first breakthrough working with a client, when I finished working with them, we still had some sessions left, they naturally started doing what they valued and loved because I got them to do the values determination at the start too. And I thought, well, that's an interesting spontaneous thing to occur. What's that about? And I thought, well, was it the breakthrough that I did that activated that? Or is that their natural potential? And when we have emotional challenges, we cloud the natural potential, but they don't have to be instructed to do that. That's their modus operandi. And the more that we clog up our minds. So I said, okay, I'm going to put a kind of note on that and watch that. 10 breakthroughs later, same thing happened. 20, 50, 100, up to a couple thousand today. So I've come to the belief that that's your modus operandi and your natural way of living is to do what you love and love what you do and attempt to do that in all 7 areas. But the more brain noise that we have and the more cloudedness that occupies time and space, because we can do it, it can do it consciously where we're aware of something that's driving our life and we don't like it or a number of things. It can be unconscious where we don't even know when it's running our life. It can be subconscious where it's occasionally popping in, but then we're kind of in and out of it. But the wisest place for it to be is in our superconscious, where we bring the unconscious into conscious, we equilibrate it, and now we have a superpower because it's brought into our superconscious. So that's the best piece of advice I can give, which is to clear the brain noise and all of the background fluff that gets in the way. And I'm sure when we did that breakthrough in that relationship afterwards, you would have felt a sense of energy and vitality and relief and enlightenment and just gone, whew, now that I don't have that occupying 60, 40, 20, whatever, a large percentage of your day, like a handicap, now I actually have the ability to just focus on what I'm most inspired by and put all my energy towards that. And as an entrepreneur, we're juggling so many different areas of life, and many people, they're redesigning the wheel. Because when I did this field, it's not like a doctor or something where you can just take a course and someone's going to show you how to set up a business. Every person's setting up their own and creating their own. So they're in this amazing space of creation, but there's a lot of volatility in that as well. And you've got to be quite resilient emotionally. And that's the other thing, it's emotional resilience. A lot of entrepreneurs fail with amazing business ideas because they jump into it without master planning it. I think it's wise. A small percentage of people can jump into something and they've either financially backed or they've just got the resilience to make it work. But I think the other 90 or so percent of people jump into something and they don't realize if you're an entrepreneur and you jump into a brand new thing, then you might be the marketer, the HR person. You may never have managed people before. Now you're managing people. Now you're the graphic designer. You're the business person. You're all of this stuff. And on top of that, you've got to make money to pay the bills. And week after week, as the business isn't really achieving what you thought that it would, there's no buffer in between. And now a person doubts their ability. Whereas if they master plan and went full time and did it on the side and then part time, once they figured out a strategy to accumulate a certain amount of wealth that would cover that, and they've done that for 6 or so months, then the person would have much more emotional resilience towards that. But then if they figured out a strategy as things came up where they could put pen to paper and balance it, that would also help too. So I'd say an emergence of those two.
It was great when I first met you and you broke down this method and you spoke about how our body, literally through our perception, creates certain chemical reactions. And being someone who loves health and wellness and food and movement and all these things to do that help our vitality, I was amazed at how you explained that when we balance out our perception from what you would say a polarizing or some kind of fantasy of like too many positives, you gave the example of like with a woman highly infatuated, seeing all the good, none of the bad. It just made so much sense in terms of then God, the universe just snapped me back to say, my gosh, these challenges happened in a way to like balance out my perception. And similarly in business, sometimes these business opportunities that have gone really, really well have then snapped back the other way. And so can you help explain that principle? Because I think whether that's in a relationship, whether that's in a business opportunity, whether that's in our own perception of our own body and our mind and our health, I think it's super, super powerful.
So yeah, it's just putting a manual together that started off as 100 pages, and I think so far on about 400, because the different ologies that interconnect with that in order to really do it justice, you have to kind of explain so many different sections. But this is one of my favorite things to teach and talk about. So every symptom that you experience within your physiology and psychology, meaning your thinking and your thoughts, the degree of brain noise or brain clarity you have, and your physiology, emotional stability or volatility, is directly proportionate to what your perceptions are perceiving. And we can either see things as polarized or synthesized. And there's two different types of polarized emotions. We can exaggerate the positives in things and create an infatuation for ourselves, anyone other ourselves, events, situations, or things. That's every perception you have in your life will fall into that. And we can do the complementary opposite for the negative. Now, people may be thinking, I have a natural desire to move away from the negative, and that's because every human emotion comes from the amygdala. It's one of the most prehistoric parts of the brain. And the amygdala is the emotional center. It's system one thinking. It's either black or white with an E. Whereas the prefrontal cortex is one of the most advanced parts of the brain, takes up about a third of the brain in the frontal lobe. And the prefrontal cortex has trillions of connections, and that allows you to make it. It's like having a trillion of the top workers in the world to help you solve a problem, or having two of them that have very opposite opinions. So I'd rather use a trillion. But when we activate the amygdala, it has a impulse to seek pleasure, it's hedonistic, and an instinct to avoid pain. So it's trying to get a one-sided reality, which creates volatility, because as an entrepreneur, anywhere that you go, whether it's your relationship, if you meet a woman and you think she's all positive, all beautiful, all nice, the bigger the infatuation, the greater the anxiety for the fear of the loss of her, and the bigger the grief when she leaves. Does that make sense? But if you exaggerate the negatives, instead of having grief when she leaves, you have relief. Or the same with a male or whoever it is that a person's dating that's watching this. So whenever we exaggerate, we accentuate the fabric of space and time, and we only have the present moment. Science can't really prove the past or the future. They see it as one present thing, but we think of it in a linear way quite often. But we end up exaggerating it. And in the moment, we get depressed about the past and have anxieties of the future and create what's called valency. And as we create valency, we exaggerate positive and negative poles. So the body, when you do that, your central nervous system that perceives your reality and it deletes, distorts, and generalizes what's happening around you, doesn't see it for what it really is. That creates what's known as a perception and a ratio of perceptions. So I can actually tell how charged a person's physiological and psychological being is by finding out what their ratio is. And we kind of have a couple of them. 1-to-1 is absolute balance. When I work with people, that's how I am, to restore them back to 1-to-1, because 1-to-1 balance of the central nervous system and autonomic nervous system restores wellness and well-being, activates potential, maximizes human growth and evolution. But once we deviate from that as a spectrum, the higher up we go in the comparison of numbers in the ratio towards the positive or negative, then the more volatility, and you could say that the more mental disorder and physiological disorder a person experiences. And we have low charges, medium charges, and high charges. High charges start from a 7-to-1 ratio and above, and that can go to affinity in 1, or below 1-to-7 or 1-to-affinity and below as well, which just means that if an event happened, like you broke up with a partner and I said, by the way, or a business deal didn't go your way, and I handed you a sheet of paper and said, can you give me all the positives of the business deal not going your way and all the negatives of that? You may write 20 negatives and 1 positive. We have a 1-to-20 ratio. And I can tell that if you've really written that and that's true, it'll be occupying a large amounts of time and space in your mind and large amounts of time and space in your body, because it goes perception, gets turned into a ratio of perceptions through your central nervous system. It's intaken through your senses, particularly the ones that we're aware of: see, touch, hear, feel, taste, because they can create anchors associated with those, where if something happens in the future and it looks the same or sounds the same, all of a sudden that can trigger off the same response now. You will have the same response directly proportionate to how much you balanced it. So if it's a 20-to-1 ratio and 5 years from now, you've never really overcome that, and it's a 20-to-1 ratio, you'll have exactly the same response. If you imagine it happening in the future, which is a future imaginary fear, usually known as an anxiety, you will have the same 20-to-1 response. You're just reliving the same perceived trauma within your human psychology and physiology. But we've gone from the central nervous system, the brain, and now that once you give it a ratio, it just sends that all the way through the body to every single part of the body, all the way down to the cellular level, by the way. So it's been creating cellular entropy in certain cases. But one of the main parts it sends that to is autonomic nervous system. And the purpose of the autonomic nervous system is to regulate chemicals and hormones. That's all emotions are, by the way. Chemical and hormone distributions throughout the body, depending on which emotion you're experiencing. If it's anxiety, it's adrenaline to the heart, for example. And people may be thinking, well, if I'm positive, that's the purpose of life. Go and study perceived things like dopamine and perceived positive chemicals. And what you'll see if you go to, even use your ChatGPT and type in what are the negative impacts of dopamine, and it'll clearly illustrate on there that that is a chemical that makes you blind to the downsides and exaggerates the upsides. So if you're having too much of that, you're going to move closer into a potential dangerous situation. And that's why in business, if you get too much dopamine over a business deal, you're guaranteed to get screwed over, because you exaggerate the upsides. You create a chemical in your body that makes it hard to see the other side. It's an addictive substance. So you'd like a heroin junkie, you keep running from it. And they're all feedbacks. And people think that the feedback of positive is good and the feedback of negative is bad, because the amygdala is attempting to run their life. But that's not the wisest way to run a business or certain areas of your life, because you've lacked resilience now. Now you have an infatuation that you think you're resilient to, but you can't hold on to it, because no matter what you do, there's still going to be the challenge and the opposite occurring. There's no business, it's all profit and all up. You have symptoms within the business too. And the businesses that have lasted the longest have the time in the market and the resilience and the buffer and the strategies, because they're not looking at all the positives. They actually strategically look for perceived negatives and how they can turn them into wins. They take things that have occurred that they perceive to be negative and equilibrate it. They take things that are positive and look at the drawbacks of it, so they can get prepared for that too. So that feedback is what I call intuition, attempting to bring you back into equilibrium through the things that occupy time and space in your mind and your body. Because if you're highly elated with a partner, you can tell in your mind, you can't get them out of your mind. And if you're highly elated about a business deal as well, you can't get it out of your body. Those are the two massive feedback systems. So if you're attuned and aware, you'll catch your amygdala attempting to run your life where your emotions are running you instead of you running your emotions. And the degree in which something is occupying time and space in your mind and body is actually going to reflect the symptomology and the level of disease and disorder. And then by applying something like the DiMartini method, you can restore that back to a one-to-one balance, and it stops occupying time and space in your mind and body. And when people have done that with me, I have a woman I worked with yesterday. She's worked on about 7 different charges, including a relationship, really volatile thing, that she'd been working with psychiatrists and psychologists for like 10 years, hadn't been able to put a dent in it. In 9 weeks, it's completely transformed it. And she said, this partner's ringing me now, and there's no emotional triggers. I'm just talking to them normally. She's like, I can't believe how quickly this happened. Said, I did it really within 2 weeks. So that's the feedback, and that's what your psychology and physiology is attempting to do. But most of these other ologies have attempted to, so for example, if I look at psychiatry, it's saying when a person, we're reading the same data. If a person is depressed, they'll say that they're experiencing a lack of dopamine, for example. And I agree with them, because if you were to do a test and have a look, yes, if a person perceives more drawbacks and benefits, they alter the ratios of chemicals and hormones in the body, so the dopamine will go down. But it's a temporary thing. They're calling it a permanent thing. And here's a chemical to counteract and balance that and increase the dopamine, usually too much, in my mind anyway, because now you're moving it from one delusion to another. So a person can naturally control that. And as they do, they create self-governance. They restore wellness and well-being. It maximizes their potential. And then an entrepreneur will maximize potential, a strategy to actually see things for what they are, minimize emotional volatility. That's a super weapon right there.
When you shared this at my event in my garage at the time, with the podcast, and then at the events that I used to run, I was mind blown. I was like, this is so interesting, and how you explain it just makes so much sense. And it's
I
just
think the
connecting.
audience was too. Not just, I just remember the first time I did it, and people were like, oh, we didn't realize we were doing this today. No, I thought we were going to do some breathing or something. I remember the looks on their faces when I just started drawing it, and I turned around and there was just eyes staring. And I said, okay, you guys are fascinated by this as well. You're noticing the distinctions between psychology and physiology, physiology and symptomology. And I think people like me were very intrigued and said, hold on a second, I never thought of putting all of those together, and that they're actually an algorithm that's communicating something. And maybe some of the challenges, I'm putting myself in their perspective anyway and assuming, but I did speak to a lot of them on the phone, so I could say this is true. Maybe some of the challenges that I'm facing have reason, meaning, and purpose, and the universe in my mind is attempting to equilibrate my perceptions. And if I could understand that, maybe I could solve some of these problems I'm having. So I think that's what I saw in their faces anyway.
Yeah, we were feeling it, and everyone got such great results from it. And yeah, even to today, one of our mutual friends, says that was a pivotal moment that transformed his life.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's work that really works. Tell me, with the advancements of technology, specifically AI, how is this now impacting your line of work? Is this helping create bigger, quicker, faster breakthroughs, or is this potentially causing more challenges for people and more disconnection? What have you noticed with AI, and how has that impacted your industry so far?
Yeah, I haven't had an issue with it, to be honest. It's people ask, does it help or does it hinder? I say both. The answer is always both. When the the telephone was first created, people thought it was the most ridiculous idea in the world that people could contact you in your house. Today, you and I call each other on WhatsApp and save a hell of a lot of money, whereas my dad used to get a phone card and be really stringent on how much time he had. So social media can be used to bring people together, and it can be used to create hate towards other people. We just had a Bondi thing that happened here in Sydney, and you can see that there's people perceiving aspects of tragedy and trauma, but then you've got Australians and Jewish people coming together, and you can see a lot of camaraderie happening in Bondi in a way I've never seen before. It's quite beautiful. I believe that it's wise to have a little bit of skepticism and optimism, and that it's doing both. The real question is, if you get too polarized on one side, you can get a little elated about it, and you may try and do too much AI and lose the personal touch in my field when it comes to helping people. But if you don't use it, you can kind of be walked over and somebody else will utilize it. So I think it's just technology. And it's pretty ridiculous to think that technology isn't going to advance in any field. Just happens that this one touches a lot of fields. And the wisest thing you can do is figure out how can you utilize it? How can you research and understand it to a degree where you kind of see where the future is going? Because you do competitor analysis. That's a competitor analysis as well, or competitor analysis, because you're looking at what they could be using that could trump you in the future. I'll give you a great example. When I was in Melbourne, I used to see 90% of my clients in person, and 10% would be on the phone or something like that. At the time, Zoom meetings weren't really a thing. And then when I moved to Sydney, because most of my clientele were in Melbourne at that particular point, I worked with people globally, but a lot of people used to come into my Toorak office. And I started dating my partner, Renee. And then I went the opposite way. I said, let me test the model of 90% online and 10% in person. And at first there was a bit of resistance from my clients, but then they loved it, because when they realized they didn't have to deal with the traffic in that area and an extra hour to an hour and a half of driving, and they lose 15 to 20 minutes in an hour to an hour and a half session moving their car or something like that, because we had half an hour car parks right at the front, but people would just fight for them. It was a little ridiculous. Then all of a sudden they just got home, put on their favorite set of trackies, sat in their favorite chair, put their earphones on, put a cuppa on, and I was in their world. I actually made their life more convenient. But some of the people in the industry that I worked with said, that's not going to work. That model's outrageous. It's not personalized and all this stuff. And I transcended that when one day I was driving in peak hour traffic and a client rang me, and I picked it up in my car. And at the time, I did this process called timeline therapy. And I just kind of memorized it. And then I've been doing it for probably only 3 months or so. And they would tell me about a challenge. And I thought, oh, that's easy. That's just to get rid of it. It should only take 5 minutes. So I said, all right, where are you? Close your eyes. And I got them to go up and above their timeline, did it. And I was more focused on the traffic than I was on them, but I knew the process. It was unconscious to me. I could just let it run kind of thing in the background. And then they had this massive sense of relief, and they went, oh my God, I've been working with my psych for that for years. I feel great. I can't even find the emotions in that. And when they left, I went, well, that wasn't even my best stuff. That was kind of me in the background. That was a multitasking thing, but it just seemed to be the greatest thing that I could offer at that time, instead of letting them talk about their problem, which is just to repeat the same pattern, get a temporary relief only to have it reappear. But that was a permanent thing. So that got me thinking, if I can do that with just a little bit of my time and attention, but it was over the phone, then I can really, now this thing that's always in your pocket is your connection to me. And we have a connection where I can serve you from anywhere around the world. That's much more impressive than having to have to wait a week before you can actually see me in person. But anyway, I ran with that model and I started creating all the infrastructure around it. And today, you kind of came into here and you go, this is what I usually use. There's a whole different setup I usually use. And you saw it and went, wow, you got a digital whiteboard and it's like you're doing a bloody presentation online. This is crazy. So when COVID happened, those same people came back and said, hey, can you help us out? Because we're not online the way that you are and we need to build the infrastructure. I said, I can. You may have ridiculed me back then, but it's going to cost you now because it's taken me years and I've spent a lot of hours in it. So that was quite funny. So I think it can help and it can hinder, but the people, the entrepreneurs that are the wisest are looking at both, setting their strategy for the next 6 to 12 months, implementing and integrating it, as well as doing the challenging aspect of trying different AIs to see what works and investing a little bit of money and seeing if it's worth it. But they probably the smartest people are implementing little bits at a time and then delegating it to assistants or other people to put into their business so they can save time and they can become more of the visionary that is spending more time on the vision of the business and where it's moving and less time in, bogged down in things that are low priorities.
For sure. Fascinating stories, fascinating stories. But I'm curious to know, how can your coaching, and what type of coaching do you do? How does it help people? Who is it that it helps, and what type of programs do you have? Is anything coming up? How can people get in touch?
I only help very handsome men and women. It's the elite of the elite. I'm only joking. I can really
Who
serve
are
the
just
need.
like you?
Say it again. No, that's why I'm talking to you. Very handsome man. But done quite a bit of modeling and things back in the day. I remember seeing the pictures. But no, I've got a lot of good and bad jokes. But I used to do this job 16 hours a day, so it's impossible not to be me. And when teaching people to be authentic, I think it's wise to share a bit of my authentic, dorky self, funny self, non-funny. It's all there. But I can help human beings in pretty much all 7 areas of life: physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, vocational, family, by finding their greatest volatilities and turning it into their super strengths, and taking the biggest emotional challenges and showing them how to permanently resolve them for life so that they can free up the brain noise within their mind. And usually when you work on a couple of things, that's when you really activate genius potential. And you can let go of brain noise and brain fog, emotional volatility, increase energy and vitality, give yourself permission to play a bigger game, get clearer on your values and what your mission and vision in life is. I mean, I could really go through the 7 areas. The reason that we kind of got to this point was not what everybody thinks they're bringing to the table as their challenge or goal is always their challenge and goal. Person might come in and say, my business isn't thriving. And I say, we have a holistic look at all 7 areas of their life to see what all the pieces are that are on the table. I find out they're about to go through a divorce. So I work on the divorce with them, and then naturally their business goes up. And then we actually start working on the business stuff because they've got the filter to do that. And they're not having a side project that they're doing that keeps preventing them from popping into sessions and things like that. So sometimes we waver when we find what the real root cause is and not the symptom of what they think is the problem in their life. But there's a few different ways we do that. There's one-on-one consulting, where I individually and personally work with somebody. We're releasing Emotional Intelligence University in 2026, which is an online and group training protocol where you can come in and learn how to resolve grief, resentment towards yourself or anybody else, infatuation. We're going to have there's a couple of other protocols, how to dissolve or resolve events, situations, or things that highly charge you and occupy time and space in your mind. And it's a curriculum, for what I perceive, people should have been taught at school. There's a couple of things I think that the education system fails on that are pretty important for life. Financial literacy, understanding investing, money, management of money, and how to grow it. People don't get taught that. You got to go out and find it yourself. And it's kind of pretty important. And if you end up in a certain level of debt, it may minimize the opportunities that you have in this lifetime. How to get clear on what you love. There's a figure, I don't know if it's true or not, that most people commit suicide on a Monday, go to a job they're uninspired by. And that's the highest rate. And that's really the reason that it's wise to do what you love and love what you do within that as well. Eating, health, and vitality. A lot of our model for medical care is about symptomology and putting a chemical into you instead of understanding the root cause. DeMartini, my mentor, said it really well. He said, you can go to a doctor and say that you're experiencing flatulence, and they'll say, hey, take this pill for it, because they see the symptom as the problem. But if you go to a chiropractor, they'll say, what did you eat? And they might find out that your lifestyle and the foods that you're putting inside of yourself is really the challenge. And if you address that, then you don't have to take this pill over and over again like a subscription, but you can get down to the root cause of that. So I believe that's another one. But one of the most important and the ones that I'm most inspired by is mental health. which is understanding the feedback of the mind and the body so you can let go of challenges in minutes and hours instead of weeks, months, or years. Because that's kind of the thing that holds it all together, I found. Because if you could put all the best foods in your body, but if you've got emotional volatility, usually the amygdala, as we mentioned before, it's hedonistic, it's pleasure seeking. It's going to want to avoid pain and seek pleasure. So to look for something, if you're feeling something extremely negative in your life, in your perception, you will look for something extremely pleasureful. That's why people do heroin and things like that. That's why people get addicted to food, instant gratification, drugs. You can put whatever it is in there. But the addiction to one thing is really a counteracting of the thing that they're trying to avoid. So the minute that gets triggered, oh my God, let me get a quick pleasure, then they have that thing that creates the pleasure. The bigger the pain, the bigger the pleasure they go for. So if you can balance that and you can manage your own mind instead of your emotions running you, then it becomes a lot easier to eat healthy. It becomes a lot easier to manage your finances instead of being destructive with them. So they're the things that I'm interested in. And interestingly enough, we are working with a few other partners to bridge the gap in those areas as well. And they'll hopefully become part of that educational platform. There'll just be higher levels of stuff where a person starts with their emotional mastery. So there's in-person, there's group work, and there's online self-paced work that's coming out in 2026. So you do it at your own pace.
Amazing. Amazing. When going through working with you and some of the homework, it's shifted not just my relationships in terms of what you started with, the self-worth.
Can we quickly touch on that? Can you tell people about the relationship content on the door going into the toilet at your house?
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, where I used to live in Sydney was in a garage. It was a 6 carport garage and it had a gym and a pool table and a ping pong table, a bedroom, a bathroom, a lounge room, an office. It was like decked out with everything. And my home was always just like a welcoming environment. And it was a way of me sharing who I was, my individuality in the environment, whether it was like having hats connected up to the top here or putting photos. One of the big parts of my life has been personal development. And so when I worked with Emmanuel Anthony, and I was like, bro, I need some support with this relationship. I'm so stuck. You sent me these printouts on the phases of a relationship, the infatuation phase, and maybe you can break them down. But I printed them all out and I was like, well, the only way I'm gonna break my own patterns of these like toxic relationships or unhealthy relationships is to remind myself of these stages and make sure I can work through each step in a healthy way. So I put them as I was going into the bathroom, just on the wall there. So everyone that went into the bathroom would see these stages of relationships, plus all these other quotes and things like that. And it was always it's a funny moment whenever I chat with you, Emmanuel. You're always like,
Well, like
do you
I'm
still have
walking
that
into
at
the
your house?
bathroom and I see my work scattered around the door to the bathroom, and it stuck. You may have held more people in relationships than me. Every time they went to go to the toilet to do a poo, but they may have got rid of some. I don't know if I could swear here, but shit in their life as well. So they would have felt double the enlightenedness from going to the toilet in your house. And I giggled. I remember asking you, and I said, hey, you've got printouts, and you go, yeah, I'm trying to make it stick. I'll walk past it. I grab one principle, I focus on that, and then I come back out and I went, this guy, he's doing it. He's getting it. Like he doesn't just want to see theory and put it on a shelf. He wants to apply it to his life. And that's power, by the way. That's true power. Power isn't knowledge, because you can know the thing but not do the thing. It's the application of the knowledge that creates true power. But anyway, I just wanted to say that. You can ask me the question again, because I'm always reminded of that. It's a beautiful moment.
Oh, the good old days. I'd really like to get that printout, and maybe there's some printouts or some free resources. I think you offer a discovery call as well for anyone listening to learn a little bit more
Correct.
about your work. Is that right?
Yeah. So the discovery call is an opportunity to see if we'd be a great fit. I'm all about great fits. To me, inconsiderate fit is one where somebody talks to some kind of person they perceive to be a professional. I'm using the word professional loosely, because the professional in my mind is the person that achieves the result, and quite often in the shortest period of time, although time is not always the thing that you're gauging. But if you and I went to go do some drills with a NBA basketball player, we may be fumbling the basketball and just kind of working on fundamentals and struggling. That basketball player could have an earpiece in their ear and be doing the drill like unconsciously and hitting 95% of their shots. And we'd be sitting there going, this is crazy. And it's unconscious, but the difference between us and them, the amateur and the professional, is the results. So if somebody is having a conversation with somebody for years to overcome a trauma or something like that, or a challenge within their life, and they're still in the same place and have barely moved in the emotional volatility, that's not a professional, that's an amateur in my mind. So I want to, when I'm having that call, I want to clearly make that distinction. I want to help a person understand, where are you at now? What outcomes are you looking to achieve? What's realistic? What's the time frame? What can we permanently resolve? And these are all the services and what I offer. And this is how we go about doing that. And if that's something that they're willing to do the work in, they're 100% dedicated to that, then it's a wrap. We're going to be getting results usually within the first 14 days around their biggest charges that are permanently being released. But that's really what it's about. It's just a virtual coffee to have a conversation and see if we're a great fit. If we're a great fit, let's work together. If not, then that's perfectly fine. We just kind of part our separate ways, but what they get is a clear understanding of where they are, how they got there, the symptoms of their body, what they're communicating, and then what the next steps would be in order to absolutely overcome that challenge.
Before I ask my final question, my favorite question, just to touch upon this, what I really like about your work is that a lot of the coaching industry is fluffy and woo woo and just like empty promises. There's no specific outcome. And what I really like about this process, it's like it's effective, it's simple, everyone can do it, it's repeatable, it's proven, and you actually get a specific outcome. If someone's going through X, Y, and Z with a partner or a business partner or themselves or something they can't break or let go of, this is a predictable, credible, just like reliable, result driven process. And that's what I like about it. It's just that's what I wanted to say there. So yeah, reach out to
But
Emmanuel. I'll put the
there
link
should
around.
be KPIs. Pardon me for interrupting, but there should be, in a successful business, you have KPIs, key performance indicators as to where a person is. And that's important because not only do you understand where you are, but you also get a key understanding of if you're off track and then what you need to do to get back on track. The fluff that's in the personal development industry has people performing things that don't create results and then blaming the clients for it when they follow those processes all the way through. If a person follows everything that I say within the methodology, then they're going to get the results. And in fact, the faster they follow those instructions, the faster they get, because I've formulated a system that minimizes and mitigates the old strategies and patterns and gets them to just focus on the results. So I've just distilled it to what works. And there's a strategy for all different aspects of the human psychology and what we'll experience. So I agree with you. And I did it wasn't intentional. It was just on a discovery call. When you ask people what their challenges are, I also ask them what previous forms of therapy they've done and what's worked and hasn't worked. What did they want and what did it achieve or not achieve? 95% of my calls, I've done a couple of thousand of them today, say the same thing. I've seen this and that and this professional, and all we did was talk about the problem, and I got a temporary relief, and I'm still in the same damn place. And after I kept hearing that, I went, that's the problem I got to solve. If I'm going to be, number one, if I'm going to call myself a professional and look at another human being, and every human being is worthy of love and connection, if I'm going to look at them in the face and I want to have true equal exchange, I've got to find out what they want. They want to permanently let go of that emotion. What do I want? I'm inspired to teach them how to do that and give them a tool for life. Okay, now that's what I want to do. Now I can go to bed every night and sleep very, very calmly because I know that we're both achieving that. And I've seen that in thousands of cases. Whereas if I was just listening to a person talk about depression for 1 year and not one thing changed, I don't know how I could even accept money from that person. Like, how does that even make sense? I'd be going to bed and saying, I win and you lose in that scenario. So that's what it is. It's a KPI system around something that a lot of these people that they call professionals are wanting to make vague and make a soft science. And I want to make it concrete and a hard science. But yes, I agree with that. That's basically where I was going.
Exactly. So I'll put the link around here. Get in touch, do a discovery call with Emmanuel. Take this next year to the next level. 2026 is here. It's time to take action on it now. Don't start 2026 in January or February, right? It's too late. Start now. So my final question is this. Pause before we continue. The first way we as entrepreneurs introduce ourselves when we walk into a room, it's our energy, right? People feel that. And secondly, it's our face. How healthy do we look? So for the entrepreneurs out there who care about how they show up, I'd love to share with you personally. I've been utilizing some Korean skincare products now just for over a month, and I had no idea about them up until, even just 2 months ago. But it's by far one of the best investments I've made for my skin. I feel it's literally making me look younger, and it has this like glassy, super fresh look. And so this is the number one exported Korean beauty brand and skincare line in the world. The ingredients are second to none. Even pregnant women can utilize them, because out there's so many products that have toxins in them that really make our face not healthy over a long period of time. And so if you're out there and you want to match the energy that you output with how healthy you look, you can trial these products risk-free for 30 days. If you don't like them, send them back and get all your money back. If you're out there, if you're curious, check out the link below to learn. Let's get back to the episode. What challenge would you like to impart with everyone listening today? What is that thing that you want them to do today, this week, this quarter, this year, this decade, that will really help them have the biggest breakthrough?
Well, I'll do two things actually, because you just said something that activated two things. The first one is your new strategy for finishing the year. Mid-October to mid-November, I call that a marination period, just like you marinate a meat or something when you want to get it extra juicy. So I would take out if it's an iPhone, maybe notes or an iPad or something, and then write down all 7 areas of life: physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, vocation, and family. And just start reflecting on what you really enjoyed that year, the goals and the things that you did that most inspired you. And then just let naturally, consciously or unconsciously, you might be working or something, and then a thought just comes to you and you quickly jot it down, what you're inspired to commit to in the next year, 5 year, 10 years, whatever, whichever one it is. Because sometimes you see a bigger goal and you know that the next year you got to break that down. By about mid-November to the start of December, it's going to be a 2-week period, then I challenge you to set aside, I know we're talking about the past, but this is a great way of knowing it now, because if you know it now, you can put it in your calendar and plan it in the future. Then take the time to go to your favorite cafe, your favorite beach, and actually start to really now take those thoughts and put them into concrete. I'm inspired by this. I want to achieve this. Usually there's a couple of goals, some big goals and some minor ones. The minor ones may only take a couple of days or weeks to achieve. So you're going to knock a couple of those off in a year. But the bigger ones, you might want to create a massive chiropractic practice or something. That may take a couple of years. So you break it down into monthly goals and outcomes that are small bite-sized things that you're guaranteed to be able to achieve, that are too ridiculous. Because don't forget, if you set a goal that has too little a time space horizon, you have anxiety as a feedback to get you to set realistic timeframes. If you have a goal that is too big, too small, in too big a time frame, then you get boredom. These are just opposite extreme symptomologies attempting you to set more realistic goals to stay inspired. So if you get that done by December the 1st, you'll probably be so energized to achieve these goals, you won't wait till January the 1st. You'll start hitting the ground running. And I had a lady that I worked with for years that wanted to buy a property. And in October, we kicked her butt. And I said, you've slowed down on this. Do you want it or not? And she started taking action. In December, she got inspired and started really, because she wrote the goal down. She said, I'm going for this. By February, she had been approved to go. She thought it wouldn't happen by mid-year, but she was about 3 or 4 months ahead. She got the approval to start looking at properties, and now she has that property. When we first started working together, we worked on like a large amount of debt that her ex had accumulated and dumped onto her. So this has been a real big project, but that showed the power of that. So that's the first part. If you do that, especially if you're in Australia, most people in Australia, from Christmas to just after New Year's, is a weird period of no time and space where people get lost and don't know what day it is or anything. And then you have a bunch of public holidays and summer. So most people don't really, although they go back to work mid-January, they're not really psychologically there till probably about March, because you kind of start working and then you got these public holidays and you've got 3-day week on top of another public holiday. So they're all over the shop. But if you've done that, you're 4 months ahead of everyone, not 3, because you started in December. So that's the first one in that. The next challenge would be to utilize the system around that, where every single month you once again went to your favorite cafe or to that spot, put your earphones on for an hour, you assessed where you were with the goals that you were looking to achieve. If you're smart, you probably do it weekly on a Monday or something and just look at your goals and make sure that they're in the calendar. If it's in your mind, it's a thought, but I forgot the number of thoughts that we have in a day. It's ridiculous. I think it's in the trillions. So if you just let it float around, it'll disappear. But if you take the time to put it on in a calendar, you're making it crystallize. And then if you actually go and do what you put into your calendar, you turn it into a form of reality for you as well. So if you take once a week, even just half an hour, you assess it. How am I doing? Where am I behind? Where am I ahead? How am I going to manage this time, etc. But that once a month, you really look at how you're going in preparation for the next month. Those small units of doing that will inspire and energize you. And when I work with clients on our Life Mastery program, where we do that together and hold them accountable, they found that for my clients to be doing that for 4 or 5 years, they've actually shortened the time frame of achieving their bigger goals down, and they've achieved them sooner, up to sometimes 50% sooner. Other times, like 90% sooner. That's pretty ridiculous on some of them. But they also find more energy and vitality within all 7 areas of life. So that would be my challenge, to do that process in October and November and hit the ground running, and then have a system that really helps you to master plan an amazing and fulfilling life. If you don't live and focus on setting a life of inspiration, you will live a life of desperation. If you don't set it on high priority, you are guaranteed to live a life on low priority. And if you don't set the intention for what you're inspired to share with the world, that's your vision and mission that the world desires to see, then you will work for somebody else uninspired, helping them create their vision and how they're going to change humanity. So you have that ability in you. Give yourself permission. And that's why the first thing we discussed was self-worth, because it starts from there. Self-worth is related to self-permission, and self-permission is also related to self-worthiness. So it's what you think you're worthy of, whether it's a partner or anything else, or settling, what you give yourself permission to share with the world. And the people with the biggest visions and the biggest missions on planet Earth have energy and vitality till their 60s, 70s, etc. If you see somebody that's very old, but looking very young and working out and highly energized, the reality is in all 7 areas: physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, vocational, family, they probably are still setting their goals and intentions and outcomes and reflecting them on a daily basis in all those areas. And that's why they've got that energy and vitality. They're not just retiring and waiting to pass away, but they still have that same level of energy that they're approaching life with.
And what a great challenge. One, plan starting in October. Yeah. Why do people start planning in the start of the year? And secondly, have a system. Check in weekly, monthly, quarterly. That's an amazing process. Well, we did it. We did it. This is probably the shortest interview we've ever done.
Yeah, we had another 17 hours in us like usual.
I think our first one was like 2.5 hour interview or something.
Yeah, I think we only
Actually,
stopped because one of us had to go somewhere or we had other plans. But, I think we're two guys that would love to see people do what they love and love what they do. And anytime we can share that and people are interested in listening and we can create a change in their life, it makes sense with all this knowledge that we're accumulating over the years, that we want other people to also get the distilled best versions of that and implement it in their lives as well. So I really hope that your viewers love this, that they put this on their save and they watch it a couple of times over and they take action with the items that we mentioned, and it creates a real change in their life because they deserve it.
brilliant. There you have it, everyone. Please share this around. Who do you know that would really benefit from this message today? Who's going through something that we shared that would find this an absolute gift during this time of year? Reach out to Emmanuel, like, subscribe, share this around, and we'll see you next time on the Breakthrough Moment podcast. Thank you, Emmanuel. See you next time.
Thanks for having me. Nothing but love to everybody.